Unfortunately, we have to start with the latest round of spring cleaning that we get. It feels like every year, or almost every year, around this time from WWE. The post-WrestleMania talent cuts. Because no matter what they tell the talent about budget cuts and it's just cost cutting, the reality is they have a lot of people under contract, with more coming in and not a lot of spots for everybody on TV. 17. That is the number of wrestlers as of today, as of the Sunday I am recording this, that have been given their walking papers. 17 talents from across the WWE and NXT rosters. The biggest among them, literally, being Braun Strowman. He was also the most surprising of the bunch, as he was the last time they released him 4 years ago. It was shocking back then that he wouldn't have had a no-cut contract like I'm sure some of the top stars there do. Either he didn't push for it this time, or he did and they said no. But he was a big enough name at one time that I'm surprised he didn't have one. And he had a rough go of it last year. He was out with an injury earlier in the year, and then later in the year he was out after, it was in the fall when he entered that fun program with Bronson Reed that really helped elevate Reed to another level. And in their last Monster Standing match, he suffered a torn groin. And he finished the match. He kept going. It was pretty clear that something was wrong. I think people thought it was a knee injury or something. Then we come to find out he tore his groin. And they kept going, and they beat the living hell out of each other. But that took him out for a while. And then at the beginning of this year, he caught a bug that really kicked his ass to the point where he lost 36 pounds. And he was not on the WrestleMania card this year, but he appeared at the roast of WrestleMania. He was in Las Vegas, and he appeared at the roast where he asked why he wasn't on the WrestleMania card, only for Paul Heyman to tell him, because you suck. Which Heyman gleefully recounted on Pat McAfee's show publicly the next morning. Dude tears his groin helping get one guy over. Then he works with Jacob Fatu to help get him more over by giving him a big guy to beat. Then he gets told, hey, you suck. And then he gets fired. That's rough. But if you watch Strowman, he wasn't moving around too well. It was painful sometimes watching him run on those knees. And he's a 40-year-old big man with bad knees. I mean, so is The Undertaker, but he's not The Undertaker. And I think there's still value in using somebody like him, but physically, he just seems very limited right now in what he can do. Maybe that factored into why they released him. I'm sure he was also making a ton of money. The last time they fired him, he was said to be on a $1.2 million guarantee. I don't know that he was making that kind of money the second go-around, but I would bet that out of all 17 names that are gone, he was the highest paid of the bunch. And if they're not using him, that puts him in their crosshairs to be cut. I wouldn't be shocked if his salary worked against him more than anything else. And I know that sounds silly. I mean, this is a company that loves to tout record profits and record gates every week, the most successful WrestleMania in the history of the company. It doesn't matter. If they have no plans for you, they're not going to pay you to sit home and do nothing. Tony Khan might, but they're not going to do that. I don't know if he wants to keep wrestling. If he does, AEW does not have the best track record when it comes to big men. I really don't think he would do well there at all. It could be fun to see him do something with a Big Bill or a Powerhouse Hobbs, but I just don't think he would be a good fit there. If he wants to work, though, and he doesn't price himself out, he'll definitely get offers. I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue for him. But he wasn't the only one to get fired for a second time by WWE. Dakota Kai was also let go. This one has upset a lot of people online because Dakota Kai has a lot of fans. She, too, has been hampered by injury issues. 2 years ago, it was a torn ACL. Last year, it was a torn meniscus. This year, it was a concussion. She missed the Royal Rumble because of that. Maybe the injuries played a role. I felt the same about Tegan Knox when they released her, that maybe they felt a little gun shy about doing anything with her because of her past injury issues. She felt like someone, she and Dakota, felt like someone who would really benefit from them creating a women's intercontinental title. And she lost both times that she challenged for it. I think Kairi Sane getting hurt and Io Sky getting pushed to the women's world title did a lot of harm to her because that effectively ended Damage Control. She had nobody to team with. And Dakota Kai on her own, there just wasn't a spot for her. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but Triple H obviously did not see her as being worthy enough to carve out a spot for her on the show. And he should have, but he didn't. And it's crazy because, again, they just created 2 women's mid-card championships, and she would be perfect for something like that. Evidently, they didn't share that same opinion, and so for the second time, Dakota Kai has been let go. And it's one of those things, with her and with Strowman, where if they fired me twice, there would not be a third time. Like, I don't think my pride would allow me to go back and work for these people again after that, unless I was broke and just absolutely needed the money. Like, how do you go back and work for this company again after they just told you twice that they don't see the value in you? Like, I would be livid. I wouldn't even give them the chance to do me like that again. Shayna Baszler is also gone. She never attained the level of success on Raw and SmackDown that she did in NXT, not even close. In NXT, she was a killer. NXT Women's Champion for 549 days between 2 title reigns. That second one lasted 416 days. On the main roster, she was used primarily as a tag team wrestler. She tagged with Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax and Zoe Stark. Becky Lynch, in her book, lobbied to lose to her. She wanted to lose the Raw Women's title to her at WrestleMania 36. This was right after Shayna got called up. I think Shayna was called up maybe a couple of months before that. But she got called up, and Vince McMahon said no. They booked her like a killer in that Elimination Chamber match. She was putting people out left and right, and it looked like she was going to go on a monster run like she did in NXT. That's why Becky wanted to lose to her. Not because she knew she was pregnant. She wouldn't have worked WrestleMania if she knew that. But it just worked out that way, where she won at WrestleMania and then had to forfeit the title anyway because she found out that she was with child. But she wanted to lose the title because she just felt herself getting stale. And she knew that it would be better to drop the belt to someone, and Shayna fit that bill perfectly. But that request was denied. And so that was it. Baszler never got a real chance again after that to try to have a run similar to the one she had in NXT. It never felt like the fans got behind her. They were always very quiet when she was out there because, again, she was never pushed at that level. Had she been pushed at a similar level, I do wonder if the fans would have bought into it. I think they would have. If the booking was similar to the booking in NXT for her, I think the fans would have come around on her as a killer, and it would have meant more to whoever it was that beat her to win the championship when she eventually lost the belt. But she just never got that chance. Now, the thing with Shayna Baszler is she's also 44 years old with a roster full of women much younger than her who are ready to be called up. So this doesn't come as much of a shock to me that they would look at that and go, well, we have all these other women that are 15, 20 years younger. We got to make room. Right? That was probably the prevailing attitude here. And it's also one in a long line of examples of WWE not giving a shit about their supposed women's tag team division, of which there is none. The Shayna and Zoe team, done. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, done. After Isla got cut last year. Kaden Carter and Katana Chance, gone. They were also caught up in this wave of releases this week. And what sucks about that is that they were a really good team. Like, they were the only team that felt like a real tag team when it came to those women's tag belts. I mean, they were together for years. They had some innovative tandem offense, and they cut them. Jakara Jackson from NXT, gone. They just broke up the Meta 4 on NXT on Tuesday, so they knew, at least that far in advance, they knew about some of these cuts. They had to, when they broke her and Lash Legend up. They all agreed to go their separate ways. Oro Mensa. He was another member of the Meta 4. He was also let go. But Jackson and Lash Legend, they were a team that I thought would get the call up any week because we had already seen them doing some matches on SmackDown. So that is yet another team broken up. Becky and Lyra, they won the tag titles at WrestleMania, and then they broke up the very next night. Liv Morgan is one half of the tag team champions, and she is in Japan for at least the next month filming a movie, and they didn't bother to vacate the titles because really, who gives a shit? Like, what are they going to do? Hold a tournament? With what teams? She could be filming for 6 months. What difference does it make? They may as well just keep the belts on them. I mean, we already knew that WWE didn't give much consideration to the tag belts. This is not breaking news. I didn't need to be validated on this, but here we are. And I feel bad for Caden and Katana, but with a dead division, they didn't stand a chance if they were going to keep them together. Cora Jade is gone. This one was a bit of a surprise. She felt like somebody they had big things in mind for. They even had her working some matches recently in TNA. She was part of that really good four-way match at Vengeance Day a few months ago. But in the ring, I didn't see anything special that made her stand out. You know, not in a division with people like Stephanie and Julia and Jordan Grace or someone like Sol Ruka, who's also very young. I think she's only maybe a year older than Cora, but she's a lot more dynamic in the ring than she is. Right, same thing with her promo. She had this really weird delivery too, where she would pause after certain words. Like, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe that's how they're teaching them down there. I don't know, but it just felt like she plateaued. At some point recently, she plateaued. And she's another one though who's been bitten by the injury bug. She had just come back from an injury when she tore her ACL a year ago. She's already back to her old ring name of Elena Black. She will be taking bookings in 30 days since she was on an NXT deal. It's a 30-day non-compete, not the usual 90-day one that the main roster talents have. You know, look, Cora signed with them at 20 years old. She's still only 24. She will absolutely be back in WWE one day. I see her being someone who's going to go out and she's going to work as much as she can. I don't know if she signs a contract somewhere or she just freelances, but Cora will be back. This is a chance now for her to go out and get even better, work with different people, up her stock, and make them seek her out. I can see her ending up in the Knockouts division, honestly, in TNA. You know, with the partnership TNA has with WWE, that would be an easy path back in for her, maybe in a year or two. But she will absolutely be back. This is not the last time that Cora Jade will wrestle under that name in her career. Gigi Dolan was released. Gigi is someone who already had a name before she even came to NXT as Priscilla Kelly. She worked for Shine Wrestling and Tokyo Joshi Pro. I think she had a couple of matches in AEW, all before she ever landed in NXT. And her big run came as part of Toxic Attraction with Mandy Rose and JC Jane. And once they split Toxic Attraction up, because, you know, Mandy went first, but they kept Gigi and JC together. Once they split her away from JC Jane, she was never the same. She just was never featured in any kind of prominent role again after that. And she was another victim of the torn ACL curse that afflicted a lot of women down there. She missed a lot of ring time. Eddie Thorpe from NXT is gone. When he wasn't arguing with podcasters on social media, he was feuding recently with Trick Williams. And it just never felt to me like he was going to be somebody that was going to get that call up anytime soon. I mean, Shawn Michaels was doing stuff with him recently on the show. He was more prominently featured in the last several months, but I just never got the impression that he was somebody on their radar for some sort of imminent call up, you know, anytime in the near future. Could he end up back in the company at some point? Possible. I just think they looked at the lay of the land and said, we don't really have anything for this guy, so we're going to let him go. Shotzi is gone. She was informed that her deal would not be renewed. And she may be the only one not outright released by the company. I'm not sure, because there's so many names here. It's possible some of them were informed the same thing. She was the only one who I read that about. I think everybody else was let go, but she was told whenever her deal is up, which I imagine is coming up soon, that they simply would not renew it. That's the same thing they did with Sonya Deville. And so she was there technically for a few more weeks, and then her deal was up, and then she was gone. Shotzi's profile has been moved to the alumni section on WWE.com. She missed 9 months after tearing her ACL last year in a match with Lyra Valkyria on NXT. There were matches of hers that I would watch and I would fear for this woman's life. You know, it was not always a pretty sight. She's got a unique look. She's got a fun personality. You know, the tank entrance, that was different. I think when she would host those Halloween Havoc shows, that was something that she thrived at. That was right up her alley. But honestly, this is one of the least surprising of all the cuts on this list. The Gallas boys are gone. Wolfgang, Mark, and Joe Coffey. And I was thinking about this, like, man, when I interviewed Wolfgang, that had to be 2017. 2018? I think 2017. So 8 years he lasted in that company. That's not a bad run. I'll tell you what surprised me. I think there was a real opportunity to call those guys up to join Drew McIntyre and have McIntyre lead his own Scottish crew on the main roster, especially against the Bloodline. Use that as a way to introduce them, even if they eventually split off on their own away from him. But they never did it. I don't know if they're going to be sticking around here, if they're going to be headed back overseas, but they lasted longer than most. Riley Osborne is gone. He was introduced in the men's breakout tournament in NXT a few years ago. They made him a student of Chase University, which was not a gimmick that had any sort of shelf life on the main roster. Then they disbanded Chase U, only to bring it back just recently, but evidently Riley has transferred to a different school now. I hope all of his credits carry over. Meltzer says his release was due to non-wrestling factors. So I don't know if, that's kind of ominous without giving any context to it. I don't know if that's a disciplinary thing. It could be a situation where maybe he asked for his release. I don't know. I do know he's married to Blair Davenport, or I guess the former Blair Davenport, B. Priestley. She got let go 3 months ago. So if he didn't ask for his release, that's tough. Husband and wife being fired within a few months of each other, that sucks. Javier Bernal is gone, big body Javi from NXT. He'll end up working indies. Maybe he resurfaces in TNA. I could see that. And Danny Palmer is gone. She was a performance center talent, spent a little bit of time in NXT and on their old Level Up show. More recently, I saw her on their Evolve show. When I reviewed that first episode of Evolve, I actually praised her frog splash. It was one of the best looking frog splashes I've ever seen. But she did it with no knee pads. She wasn't going to last long doing that, especially not after she had just come back from double hip surgery. At 25 years old, I think she's 27 now, but at 25 years old, she had double hip surgery. And at that same taping where she wrestled that match and did that frog splash, I don't know if it was in that match or if they taped multiple matches with her, but she got hurt again. This just sounds more like her body just failed her. And she's going to be getting out of wrestling altogether is what I gather from her post on Instagram. She said, "Thank you, WWE, for bringing me to the love of my life. Past 3 years have been amazing." So she's talking about Tank Ledger, one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions, Hank and Tank, because the two of them are an item. "It's a bittersweet feeling to be officially closing out my athletic career, but I can truly say that I went till the wheels fell off. Literally. LOL. Our bodies are a gift, and mine has been so kind to me. I look forward to this next chapter. God's been giving me some big dreams with bringing my business back, and I couldn't be more stoked about it. Thank you all for the support." Those were all the talent releases so far. In total, there were actually 19 cuts that we know of, including Christine Lubrano, their Senior Vice President of Writing Operations, and Ryan Popola, who used to co-host their YouTube show, The Bump. They were also let go by the company this week. It sucks whenever somebody loses their job. If they do something bad or they say something out of bounds, then so be it. Otherwise, I have sympathy for all of these people. But the reality is, no matter how much money WWE is making right now, there's always going to be turnover when they have this many people under contract. And multiple levels now of developmental. Right? They have men and women that are ready to move on up. And if you're not doing anything right now, or they don't have any ideas for you, this is what's going to happen. And I don't think it's fair to the talent to keep them around just for the sake of keeping them around if you're not going to do anything with them. When Nick Khan was on the Bill Simmons podcast and he was asked about roster bloat a few weeks ago, I said this is going to happen sooner than later. With all the people they've signed just recently, Aleister Black, Rusev, Ricky Starks, Penta, Rey Fenix, Jeff Cobb is said to be on his way in. They have interest in bringing in Mariah May when she becomes available because they'd be fools not to. These are not rookies. We're not even talking about rookies here. These are not NIL athletes. These are not developmental talents, although some of them may end up in NXT. So, these people are going to get paid. Jeff Cobb, if he's coming to WWE, what is he now, 42? If he's coming to WWE, it's because he's coming in to get paid. Because he recognizes this may be his last shot to get a real payday in his career. So all of these names are either coming in or potentially coming in. They can't just keep signing people without letting others go to make room for the new faces. And it's not just economics, it's common sense. There's only so many hours of television. You're always going to have people on the bench waiting their turn. People cycle in, they cycle out, but the bench is only so long. Eventually, you add too many people to the bench, you fall off the end of the bench. Wrestlers don't want to sit on the sidelines and watch other people work. They don't want to go through airports and fly halfway around the country to come to TV at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and sit around all day in catering watching other people on the show every week, just to turn around and fly home and then do it all over again. I imagine it's even worse when you're in your mid-30s and up. Maybe less so when you're in your 20s. Some of these people, they have plenty of time to work elsewhere and up their stock and then come back. Not everyone has that luxury. Not everyone has the benefit of time. But if this is what they want to continue to do for a living, there has never been a better time outside of the territory days to find work in pro wrestling. It's not fair to them to keep them under contract and not use them. Let them work somewhere else. Just because WWE sees no value in them right now doesn't mean that somebody else won't. And if they want it bad enough, then it will happen for them. And if they don't, well, then they'll fade into obscurity and we'll never hear from them again. But they made it to TV before. Whether it was Netflix or the CW or USA Network, whatever brand it was, whatever show it was, right? Most, if not all of the names I mentioned, they made it to TV before. That means they had something that caught somebody's eye. Whatever that is, take it and make it even better. And good things will happen. I do believe that.